Carl Adams at the National Wrestling Hall of Fame Honors Weekend. Carl, what was your thoughts when you got the call from the hall when Leroy called and said, hey, we'd like you to come out and be inducted in the National Wrestling Hall of Fame?
It was pretty amazing. It's the greatest honor you could receive in the sport of wrestling. So when I got the call, I had to pinch myself, you know, and it took a while for it to set in.
Right.
But, you know, when it sets in, you realize what a tremendous honor it is. So it was great.
So obviously wrestling's been a part of your life for a long time. As a kid on Long Island, you know, you were from a family that worked really hard. You learned a lot about work and work ethic and things like that. But how did you find yourself in wrestling?
Well, when I was 7 years old, my dad actually took us to Madison Square Garden to watch professional wrestling.
Yep.
And I loved the event. You know, we got to see Bobo Brazil, Haystacks Calhoun, the Calypso Kid, Bruno Sammartino. And so after that event, when I got back home, we used to watch it on the black and white TV as well. I just loved what I saw. And so the next time I was introduced to it was in junior high school. And there was no question that I was going to wrestle. And I already knew that wrestling fit me like a glove. I was just intrigued by the sport. And so I started in junior high school, did it in high school, and obviously, you know, all through college.
And the rest of your life. Right?
And the rest of my life, yeah.
So, I mean, it helps to have good athletic abilities, but in a lot of cases, people get opportunities because of great coaches and mentors. And that's something you had a really good record of having great coaches. Joe Campo in high school, Harold Nichols in college. And what difference did it make in your life to have such great men involved in your wrestling career, as well as your family, of course, right?
Right. Well, one part of it was growing up and the lessons that I actually learned from my parents and what we did as a family. I felt like we really learned the value of work, and we were not afraid to work. And so that really helped my wrestling. In fact, wrestling to me was easy. And a lot of people will tell you how tough it is, and we'll talk about how tough the sport is. After working for my dad, starting at age, let's call it 10, 11, 12,
Yeah.
working in the potato fields, landscaping, doing a lot of hard stuff, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12-hour days. I love to get away from that and get into wrestling.
Sure.
So wrestling came easy to me. The part that made wrestling really great was the incredible coaches I had.
Yeah.
And my coaches treated me special. They really did, as I look back on it. Even in junior high school, I had a coach that would take me to CW Post College to work out with the college wrestlers when I was 14 years old. My high school coach was the best coach, mentor I ever had. And he was the reason I ended up at Iowa State. And Coach Campbell was the reason that I became as good of a wrestler as I became. And then I had Coach Nichols. Getting back to how they treated me. He hired me as an assistant coach at Iowa State when I was 22 years old. He encouraged me to get my master's degree and paid for it out of his own pocket. He paid my salary as an assistant coach at Iowa State for 6 years until I took the head coaching position at Rhode Island University. So it was more than just about the wrestling with my coaches. And so that's one of the main reasons that I think I got involved in the sport of wrestling, is because of how my coaches treated me. I felt like I was their own kid. I felt like in some cases they treated me better than their own kid.
Yeah.
So I grew close to my coaches and these, I'm going to call great mentors. And so that's the thing that really hooked me on the sport of wrestling.
So New York State high school champ, they really, you know, that tournament was just getting going, right? When you went up there and were able to win that.
But yeah, it was a tough tournament.
Oh,
you
sure.
know, you have the 12 sections, and it was tough. I went to the New York State meet 3 times. I only won it once. But to win the section was difficult.
Yeah, well,
And so I ended up winning it as a senior. And I think the thing that really helped me was the summer of my junior year when I made the junior Olympic team, trained all summer with the best kids in the country, best coaches at that level. And then I went to Europe, wrestled a series of dual meets in Germany.
Sure.
And so when I came back, a couple things that had happened. I had gotten world-class experience at the junior level. And the other thing was I matured physically. When I went into the fall of my senior year, at 16 years old, as I look back on it, I was a full-grown man. I was a full-blown man physically, strength-wise, mentally. When I put together what my coaches had taught me and also what I had learned from my parents, I was going to be difficult to deal with.
Well, in college, right? So I think I learned something new. Were you the first freshman to win after eligibility and to be an All-American? And it was in one of the bios they had that, you came in right after they started freshman eligibility and you were a freshman All-American. Is that accurate?
That's accurate. So, 1969.
So, and you were the only freshman that year in the place.
Yes, yeah. In 1969, that was the first year that freshmen could compete at the NCAA tournament. And so that was my freshman year at Iowa State. Obviously, I was on the varsity team, and I ended up taking a 5th. And I was the only freshman that placed that year. And as it turns out, I was the first true freshman to place at the NCAA tournament.
Wow. So that's a trivia question. I didn't even know it. So that's fantastic. Did it seem like a big deal to you?
Not at the time. Yeah. Not at the time. I was actually pissed because I didn't win it.
Yep.
And not because I was cocky or anything, but my whole life I felt as a competitor that I was going to win every single match.
Sure.
And the one that I lost to an Iowa kid, it was definitely within reach.
Yep.
And after watching Noble Klein from Maryland win it, I look back on it and I just felt like I could have won it.
Sure.
And so that was my feeling about my ability to compete at that level at that time.
Now, your wrestling room was full of Hall of Famers, right? Your coach was a Hall of Famer. You had Dan Gable, you had Peterson, you had Taylor. I mean, talk about the Iowa State room, because if you go in there and you're just with the same peers you were with, it had to have helped your career.
Yeah, I mean, when you're in a room with Dan Gable, Jason Smith, Chuck Jean, Ben Peterson, Jim Dushin, Chris Taylor, Al Nason, Steve Lampe, Dave Martin. For example, my freshman year, 9 out of the 11 wrestlers were All-Americans. And over the time that I was at Iowa State, 6 of us were at least 2-time national champions. So when you're in a room like that, and you have a good attitude, you have a strong work ethic, it's hard to go wrong. It was an incredible group of competitors and coaches. In fact, all the coaches I had, Coach Nichols,
right,
Les Anderson,
absolutely,
Bobby Douglas,
Hall of Famer,
and even Dan Gable was still coaching. He was training for the World and Olympic Championship. 4 of those were in this National Wrestling Hall of Fame.
That's amazing.
So it's hard to go wrong if you're willing to work at it and put the time in.
So, any victories during your college career that stand out in your mind? You had 1-2 titles, you had tough guys, but...
Well, I mean, my senior year in the finals of the national tournament against Stan Desick, I didn't know much about him. My coaches hadn't really told me, excuse me, much about Stan. But the bottom line is that I felt like if I got to the finals, again, not to pat myself on the back or anything, it was going to be difficult to beat me, because I knew that, especially the NCAA finals, you don't get another chance at that.
Right.
and you have to make good on it. So I would say in '72, because it was my last collegiate competition, that felt great. Because you're also at a point where you're waiting for it to be over.
Yep.
Not every wrestler will tell you that, but you're done. Your eligibility's done. I finished at this level. And so that what felt especially good to me, because Stan was also a defending national champion,
Yep.
and he came up, so it was two national champions going at it.
Yeah,
And so that was a very rewarding win for me.
freestyle, you were able to concentrate on that through the next Olympic cycle and made a world team, Pan Am competition, real tough weight class.
Yeah.
Talk about the experience of being an assistant coach and training for the Olympics and how that changed your life a little bit.
Well, my training situation was pretty incredible at Iowa State. You know, you're coaching at a program that's winning national titles, that has a legend such as Dan Gable, even Ben Peterson at the time, John Peterson. You were working out against and with the best wrestlers in the world. Bobby Douglas was there. And I wrestled in the National Freestyle Tournament in 1973, 1974, 1975, 1976. I was on the backside of the mountain. In 1973, I wrestled in one tournament. That was the National Freestyle Tournament, and I won it. And to be honest, after that, I thought I was done.
Yep.
And that's when Coach Nichols came and offered me the job as an assistant coach at Iowa State. And so I kept wrestling. You're in a room, you're in good shape, you've got great freestyle coaches around. You just needed the self-motivation to do what you needed to do on your own when not everyone was in the room, because a lot of freestyle was postseason. And I knew that for sure, that I wanted to get on the world team, that after '72 I wanted to train and try to make the Olympic team, and that as long as I was able, I was going to keep going until I ended up getting a real job.
Yeah. Well,
which was at Rhode Island University,
Sure.
which you really can't say that's a real job, because I've never had a real job. Even during my 41 years of coaching, I never looked at it as a job.
Right.
So that's how much I think I love the sport of wrestling.
You must have. I mean, obviously, you made coaching your profession and
Yeah.
had opportunities to be a head coach at the Division I level for decades, right? New England. I mean, you took a flyer. You went to Rhode Island. You went to a part of the country maybe that didn't have a reputation for wrestling, and then you stayed there when you coached at Boston University. Well, I mean, in your mind, obviously, you worked with college athletes, but you also, through camps and other things, making a difference in the whole region in wrestling. What was it like when you had an opportunity to have an impact on an entire area of the country with wrestling for so long?
Well, coaching in New England, for me, was special, because I felt like when you look at this sport, coaching is not about taking the best kids coming out of high school and having them end up as the best kids in college. To me, coaching is taking kids that don't have that much to work with and bringing them as far as you can bring them. And I would say, to me, I got more joy out of working with kids that were challenged talent-wise than I got from working with kids that were supposed to do it every year.
Yeah, sure.
And a lot of people will look at my career as a coach, and yeah, we did okay for what we did in New England, and say, well, you didn't produce the national champs and All-Americans. Well, it was a totally different ball game that I was dealing with. And that's the part that a lot of times people don't look at. You don't have the facilities. You don't have the recruiting budget. You don't have the assistant coaches. In fact, it was 23 years before I got my first full-time assistant coaching position. And so we were fortunate that I had good assistants that came on and worked for free. We eventually got money for part-time assistants, but although it was more challenging, especially at the highest NCAA level, I got so much out of working with the kids that I had an opportunity to work with. And the other thing about coaching in New England, in the first jobs that I had as a coach, is that we weren't getting paid very much. And so you had to do things kind of like on the side.
Right.
That's why I work my camps, because you're raising a family, and $22,000 a year is definitely not going to do it, especially in Boston. And I feel so blessed that I had the ability and the talent to put together stuff that would contribute to the wrestling community, and that would help me stay involved in the coaching profession. Otherwise, you have to get out of a profession.
Yep.
And so, to me, it was all good. It was all wrestling related. It was all involved with my passion for the sport. So I don't have any ill feelings about any of it.
Well, that passion also included being an inventor and being creative and starting new projects and businesses. And I mean, where did that come from? Most people don't sit down and say, hey, I'm going to design a takedown machine for practice, and then go out and not only get the business put together, but design it and set up the way for it to become successful. What drove you to really stretch yourself outside of just coaching?
Well, I said earlier in the interview that growing up in the environment that I grew up in, with the parents that I had, my dad had a 4th grade education. He started business after business, small businesses, landscaping. He even put in outside tennis courts on Long Island. Mm-hmm. I have no clue as to where he got the knowledge, but he figured it out. And so I think a lot of what was in him and in my mom seeped into me and my brothers. Because if you think about the Atom takedown machine, doing that at 23 years old, with no money, no business education, and getting it on the market within a 2-year period, it should have been extremely difficult. But the lessons that I think came from my parents about finishing what you start, and that there's a solution to every problem, and that you need to take advantage of time, because when you take advantage of time, time repays you. Mm-hmm. As I look back on my life, if you put all of those things together, I had gotten to the point where, to me, if I had a great idea and it made a lot of sense, I was going to start it and I was going to finish it. And that attitude has served me well. And so that's kind of where all of that came from.
And you're still creating products and marketing them and being involved in wrestling. I mean, has become this process after being invited to be in the Hall of Fame, has it been fun? Has you seen other people you haven't seen in a while maybe, or have an opportunity to just reflect a little bit about the journey?
Well, this whole Hall of Fame thing is incredible. It's like the apex of your life when you still have life left.
Sure.
So to be here, to have friends, people that I've coached, coaches that I've coached against, former athletes, parents of my athletes, friends, to be here with them, coming to help honor me and my fellow inductees is the best. It's the biggest gift that you can get from the sport of wrestling. And so that's the way I look at that.
Well, from someone who gave a lot to the sport, it's well deserved, Carl. We're proud of you. And I don't know if I did a good interview or not, because I'm one of those guys who coach. So, but thanks so much. Congratulations. Have a great time this week. It's going to be a blast. Right?
Thank you, and I sure will. And I just want to say that having been able to work with people like yourself, Gary, to me is the most rewarding thing. Because if you think about it, guys like Jeff Buxton, yourself, Pat Duffy, and so many others who are on the top of their game, I think about that and that makes me smile.
Well, we're smiling for you this week, buddy.
Well,
Congratulations.
Thank you. Yeah,
Awesome.
thank you. Appreciate it.